Okay, recording is starting, so you can start whenever you like.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. It's January 9th, 2023. This is the GBOS LUC Joint Special Meeting regarding AO 2022-0103S1. The Girdwood Board of Supervisors, its subcommittees and committees are subject to the Alaska Open Meetings Act as found in Alaska Statute 44.62.310 and Anchorage Municipal Code 1.25, public meetings. The Girdwood Board of Supervisors operates under the Girdwood Public Meeting Standards of Conduct. I will call this meeting to order at 5:02. I'm Brianna Sullivan, co-chair, Parks and Recreation and Cemetery Supervisor, also in the room.
Guy Wade, Fire Department.
And online from GBOS, Amanda.
Amanda Sassy, Public Safety Supervisor.
Thank you, Amanda. And Mike?
Mike Edgington, Land Use Supervisor and Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mike. And from Land Use in the room?
Kevin McDermott, Land Use Chair.
Thank you, Kevin. And online, Ryan? Ryan?
Hi, Ryan Hutchins Committee, Land Use.
Thank you, Ryan. And Shannon?
Yes, Shannon O'Brien, Land Use.
Thank you. Are there any disclosures this evening? Please raise your hand or come off mute. Seeing and hearing none, the only person we are missing right now is Jennifer Wingard. If she calls in, we'll acknowledge that on the third. Agenda revisions and approval. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda for January 9th, 2023 GBOS LUC Joint Special Meeting.
I'll second that. I'd like to move that we accept the agenda as written.
Thank you, Guy. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Kevin. Any oppositions? Go by assent and approve the agenda as written. Announcements. The public is encouraged to ask questions and provide comment. Please raise your hand and wait to be acknowledged. To help discussion stay productive, please direct your comments to the board rather than other members of the public and keep your comments focused on the business under discussion. Please be respectful of everyone's opinions. Agenda number 1, GBOS and LUC consider official action on AO 2022-103S1 amendments. I would like to start us on this item. Mike, you're off mute, so if you want to go ahead.
I was actually on mute. I've got 2 mute buttons here. Yeah, I'll start. So I think the S1 is a good start, but there's some fundamental questions that the S1 probably, I don't know if it's possible for an ordinance to change. Fundamentally, it's really the project we're looking for is about housing. And this project, as it's set up, is not about housing, it's about land development. So because of that, there's almost nothing that can be done to put any, or very little that can be done to put any requirements on the actual housing that gets constructed. And because of that very fundamental weakness, I'm not sure that even if we get better amendments added to the S1, it's really going to meet our criteria or what we need out of it. In particular, from discussions I've had, there does not seem to be a way of getting housing built within a reasonable timescale. It seems that because the contractual arrangement only goes up to the development of lots and the selling of those lots, there's very little that can be, or very little that we can find that can be sort of imposed on subsequent purchases. There may be some things about type of housing, but not whether housing is constructed or not or when. So I think there's some fundamental weaknesses which are not going to be met even with more changes to S1, although there are some changes I would recommend still.
Thank you very much, Mike, for starting this and for that feedback. Anyone in the room would like to speak next?
No, I agree that, if S1's written or even S1A or whatever we're going to see at the next meeting's written, I will not incorporate what we're looking for. It's too complex a problem to just fix on the fly like this. requires some more thought put into it. I think it's a good start, and I appreciate the Assembly for working with us. You know, I think since this began, the development agreement came out, I think this is the first, you know, I've seen of municipality working with us. Much appreciated, but I just don't think it can be rewritten on the fly in a couple of weeks when this is way too complex of an issue and it's going to require more input.
Thank you, Brian. Kevin?
Thanks, Brianna. You know, I think our meeting last Wednesday really covered a lot of ground on where version S.1 falls short. And I'm not sure, you know, coming out of this meeting on the agenda is to consider official action. And if part of that is to ask the non-GBOS members, in other words, members of the LUC, if we want to have some sort of vote tonight even on that, and then put that forth to GBOS to consider for your official action. If that's premature, but yes, we have a meeting after this. It seems like, well, maybe it's something we could do during this meeting. So just to, you know, put that out in front of the board for consideration.
That is an idea. Thank you, Kevin. My first thoughts and responses to the comments so far is that while we don't want to appear ungrateful for all the work the Assembly has done and what they can do in their capacity with only 2 members working at a time in collaboration, and then all of the public feedback from Girdwood, a lot of the S1 is so much better than the S version, but it just goes much deeper than that with the complexities that you've already all stated, and then the master plan really confusion. Even though planning did help with our last joint meeting by their presence and confirmation, but coming up with a solid answer tonight, I don't feel is kind of not premature or not behind. It's just the timing of it. We're discussing something that happened last week, and then the Assembly still might amend that and come up with a new one, like you said, S1A or a new S version after that. So it's a difficult decision to say the least. And I agree that the one right here that we have, that S1, is not what will work, but especially with the ordinance question and the binding language that may or may not mean something. So, go ahead, Guy.
I have a question, just, I guess, again, kind of the objective of this meeting. So GBOS is meeting on Monday. It sounded like the Assembly was going to push off, and that's not guaranteed, but it sounded like the Assembly was going to push the whole bills off to their next meeting.
A special meeting.
And is that the 19th?
19th is a Thursday, so they have only one other agenda item, which is considering filling the seat for Eagle River, and then spending the rest of the meeting on this item.
So we're going to meet again. GBS is going to meet.
16th
16th.
regular meeting cut in, but then also I don't want to misspeak, but Assembly Council, Mr. Gates was going to decide if the S version is much different, and then I think he already determined that this one isn't much different. If it is a significant difference, they may have to have a public hearing again, and that would take a while.
So S1 is significantly different from S. It would require
Public hearing. Right, and they're already on other, like, for example, ADUs have to have a window of time if they're going to have a public hearing. Is anyone online from the board wanting to say something else or clarify?
Can I clarify a couple of things?
Yes, please.
The Assembly Council has already determined that there is no requirement to hold another public hearing. The S1 is not significantly different enough, in his opinion, in terms of the matters it considers. I personally don't agree, but I'm not a lawyer. The assembly could still open public hearing, but they're not required to. I suspect that they wouldn't. There is also rumor of potentially, an S2 or taking a different approach to it. So I don't know if action will happen on the 19th, but I do agree that because we've been told to expect nothing to happen tomorrow, we probably do have the opportunity to sort of gather feedback in this meeting, generate a resolution, and then vote on the resolution on the 16th. That's what I would recommend.
Thank you, Mike, and thanks for helping me on the facts there too. Jennifer, thank you for joining. I didn't know what time you joined, but Jennifer Wingard is here. Can you please state your name, and then I see your hand is up.
Yes, this is Jennifer Wingard, Road Supervisor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, great.
Okay. I wanted to echo what Mike said. I thought he said it really well about the issues with the S1. And then I also think it's worth noting that while the S1 kind of said some nice things, I think it's interesting that the attorneys have judged that it's not different enough to merit a public hearing. That means to me, it's not different enough to really question our community vote that we've already had about this. I mean, I think it's important to talk about things tonight, come up with a resolution and everything else, but I would agree with Mike that we should have a public hearing, but I also might agree with the attorney that this isn't as different as it might look. So I think we need a public hearing because we haven't had a chance to discuss all this stuff, but I think they also can't have it both ways. If it's not different enough for a public hearing, it's not different enough to actually have solved any of the issues we brought up with the original AO and S1. Just my thoughts. Yep, sorry.
Thank you, Jennifer. We have a question in the room, so come closer to the microphone and say your name and then.
Of course. Is there a time restriction? Okay. Hi, Joel Ribbons. So for those of you who don't know me, I teach 5th grade at the school. It's my 4th year here now. I'm actually a little bit late to the show as far as this issue. I think I, like many community members, first heard about it this summer when all the signs popped up. And I've tried to stay somewhat informed, but I went to the work session and there were references being made to page 57, this particular line. That's a lot of detail that I haven't had the time to dive into that level. So I want to acknowledge that there's a lot of people who I know have looked into this at a lot deeper level of precision than I have been able to. But the big takeaway that I had from the work session, a couple of things that I'd like to I'm just curious about people who are more experts on this issue, what their thoughts are on this, a couple of different things. One is just a question about the process. And so that question is, my impression from the work session is that Heritage Land Bank is essentially a non-binding advisory committee, and that the actual power is on the assembly. So if the assembly votes no, I mean, that's it, right? I know they vote and I know that there's precedent with the assembly of voting no, for example, with appointments, and they've asserted their right to do that without really particular explanation. So I don't really think that the assembly really owes anybody anything, as far as I can tell, as far as an explanation of why they vote no, if they choose to do so, unless I'm wrong about that. And then my other kind of thing that I noticed from the work session, just from what I've heard about this, is it seems to me, regardless of the community housing issue, which I can really empathize with because I am a teacher at the school and I do rent right now, and so you know, if I were to, you know, lose my spot, my apartment, you know, it'd be tough. But I kind of wonder, I think that community aspect of the community housing, as compelling as that is, I think that the representatives who represent us are already no votes on this. So how do we convince other assembly members to vote no? And I think that probably the best path forward would be to make the argument, if it's valid. Again, I haven't looked at the data, so again, I don't want to put, I know that there's, you know, the developers, I don't want to disparage their reputation. I don't know them at all. And if they're doing the right things, then I don't think it's fair to accuse them, you know. I don't want to imply that I know anything about what the developer has done either way. I'm just not familiar with the situation enough to say either way. And I think that from a business standpoint, I don't have any moral issue with them trying to get as strong as a bargain as they possibly can. I think that that's just the nature of a capitalist society. My concern, and I guess what I think might be more compelling for the rest of the city, is if we make more of an argument of, is the city getting the maximum amount of value out of this land? Because honestly, I can't think of 60 acres in the state of Alaska that would have more value than this. I mean, there was just an article in the New York Times about how this is one of the best investments in the entire country for winter use. So I guess my question is, well, two questions really. Like I said, first of all, am I missing anything about the process? Can the assembly just vote no? And is there any reason why they couldn't do that? Do they have to pay the contractor, the developer, $1 million of fees or something? It sounded like they were at $5,000, which doesn't sound that bad. I heard in the work session that the profit, a number that I heard thrown out as the profits to the municipality, was $600,000 with the current numbers. I mean, again, I'm an econ major, but I'm a 5th grade teacher now, so I'm a little bit rusty on all that stuff. But 60 acres in Girdwood, Alaska, for a $600,000 profit, that just sounds like a bad deal for everybody in the entire city. So those are my questions.
Thanks, Joel. Would anyone on the board like to respond to either of those questions? And
I'll have a go.
thank you, Mike.
Yeah, so the assembly can vote no. I think there is a possibility that there would then be probably legal action, or possibly legal action from the developer, because HLB have signed a binding contract. However, there is precedent for the assembly saying no under the same circumstances, which they did for the navigation center. And I think it was similar circumstances that the administration signed a binding contract without any authorization from the assembly. So yes, they can vote no. Whether they will or not is a separate question. And I think the second thing I just wanted to mention is I think there was confusion about the numbers. The latest numbers we've seen, and I think everyone who studied them now agrees, is the profit for phase 1 and phase 2 combined, based on the August analysis, is approximately 2.3 million for the municipality.
Thank you, Mike. Jennifer?
Mike clarified that really well. I just wanted to add that number confusion might have been a little bit my fault, and it stemmed from when I was asking the question, what is the profit for phase 1, which I think is a super important question to have answered because of the possibility, and some would argue probability, that phase 2 is never going to be developed. So it's unclear to me whether or not you could just cut it in half, or if there's more profit up front or more in the back end. And that's all critical pieces of information, I think, as far as the assembly analyzing this deal, but I haven't seen any accurate figures about that.
Thank you, Jennifer. Kyle?
One thing that we were working on today was finding out about the improvements for the access roads, both the primary access, which right now is called for off of Hightower, and the other one called for the secondary access off Crow Creek. And the ownership, particularly we were looking at the ownership, and we were able to find a memo from 2015 that Todd Sherwood, the municipal attorney at the time, wrote saying that the Crow Creek Road is owned by the state of Alaska, and the state of Alaska chooses how to maintain their roads both year round and summer versus winter maintenance, as we see there. But one thing that was pointed out by private development was that, you know, and I remember reading this, and it's been brought up many times in these discussions, is that the road improvements to the parcel itself are the responsibility of the MOA to pay for. And so we just received a $2.5 million grant through Lisa Murkowski for the sewer connection from Hightower up to this area. But the subsurface and final surface improvements are the responsibility of the municipality to pay for on the Hightower Road access. So that will be something that needs to be figured out in order to do it. So that's not on the developer's hands. Once they get into the parcels itself, then it is the developer's responsibility for the improvement of the roads and building of the roads. And the same goes for the secondary access. Their road will go out to Crow Creek, but when they get to Crow Creek Road, it'll be the responsibility of the MOA or the state of Alaska, whoever's going to fund it, to make those improvements. And then there's the question about the long-term maintenance of who maintains it out there in that area. So let Mike in here. So that's information that we learned today, or maybe reinforced today, as we were looking at ownership issues with Crow Creek Road.
Kyle, really quick to clarify, I think you said it really clearly, but one time you said Hightower, and I thought you were going to say Crow Creek Road, but I think you were still talking about Hightower. So the municipality is responsible for both of them.
Correct.
Okay.
To where it connects with the parcel boundaries. So.
Thank you. Guy.
Yeah, that confused me earlier. So where it connects your parcel boundaries and the parcel boundaries, or the approach to like Crow Creek up to parcel?
Both ends. So where the pavement ends on Crow Creek, we'll talk about in two sections. On Crow Creek Road itself, where the pavement ends to where the connection will be to the secondary access, that will be the responsibility of MOA to make those improvements, not the developer. And then on Hightower, where the paved section of Hightower ends right there by the school, up to where the parcel being purchased, that section, what we call the water road right now, that would need to be improved, and that would be the responsibility of the MOA to improve those sections.
Yes, one follow-up from were there any cost estimates about?
No. I mean, we could do a cost estimate, but no, there was nothing that we saw official from the developer or MOA or HLB.
Kevin?
So just, I find it's interesting that the state or DOT is not responsible for Crow Creek up to the connector, potential connector, that'd be on the municipality, it's a state road.
Not their project.
Gotcha.
We're a partner in this project. And so within that development agreement, the responsibilities for those road improvements fall on that side of the partnership. And that's the way most developments are. You know, most roads are developed out by the developer when a subdivision is created, and then the MOA takes ownership after they're done. They just have to meet the specs of a MOA road, and then they take over long-term maintenance of it. So DOT follows the same.
Yes, another question then. Since in the service area here, we maintain our own roads for the municipality of Anchorage, would we in turn be responsible for maintaining that road as we do all our other roads within the municipality here?
Well, you think also we don't maintain all the roads within the municipality. We retain
Right.
roads that are designated within the service area. So we don't, like Alyeska Highway is a DOT road. So that would be a negotiation between DOT and MOA to say, okay, we build it, will you plow up to the end of this extension now? Because right now they go to the end of asphalt in the winter. And so we would have to get them to agree to take it on and go up from there, so.
While you were speaking, I thought I saw Jerry's hand go up. Jerry or Carol, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question and a comment. So the question, first off, for Kyle is, we wouldn't be responsible for building those roads. The cost of building those roads, say on Hightower to the parcel, that would, when you say MOA, you're talking about MOA as a whole, not Girdwood service area, correct?
As a taxpayer, you're part of the club, so we're all MOA, and so the MOA is made up of taxpayers. So yes, I mean, taxpayers would be responsible for paying for the road. Now, where the money comes from, that's a question. If it comes from federal grants or state grants or some sort of taxing mechanism, those issues have not been resolved.
But what I'm asking is, it wouldn't come out of the Girdwood service area roads budget.
That has not been said. Nobody's said no to that. So,
and if they did say,
most of the time we don't fund for capital improvements. Oh, I take that back. We do, but in most new builds, I can't think of anything within my 12 years of being here that we've taken it straight from our maintenance and operation budget. We've done capital improvements, which we paid for, like flashing crosswalk lights and things like that, but we haven't paid roads at all.
so then I have a different comment, which is, I agree with Mike, Brianna, Jen, Guy, everybody. The S1 version is a step in the right direction, but it doesn't come close to housing. But from what I heard in the work session, I heard that this is going to pass. And the reason I say that is because what I heard from the assembly members is they read a lot about lack of housing throughout the United States. And when they read about it, one of the big issues with not having enough housing is because it's hard to build. And when they say it's hard to build, it's because people don't want it in their backyard. There's too many regulations. And when they read that, they want as an assembly as a whole, they are wanting more housing. And so when they say at the end of the meeting that, a few houses is better than no houses, while we know this isn't going to help our problem, it sounds like this is going to pass. So what could be a political strategy that we could at least delay this to try to get the best, solutions for us? Because in the long run, the assembly, I believe, wants to pass this, and that's just my comment.
Thank you, Jerry. We have another question, but does anyone on the board want to respond to Jerry first? He'll go to Ryan.
Hi, thanks. I agree with Jerry. As I read through the S1 and I missed the work session, unfortunately, because I was traveling, but this all seems like a foregone conclusion to me. I mean, we have our senator getting money allocated for this project before it's even been approved by the assembly. And so I think we should really look at how do we either move forward delaying this or get the assembly to work harder to do what the community has asked them to do. I totally agree with what Jennifer said about if this isn't different enough to spark a new public hearing process, then it's not different enough to resolve the issues that we've all talked about. And so I'd just like to see us end this meeting potentially with some sort of resolution of opposition, or yeah, I don't know what else, but like, yeah, I don't think that this answers the concerns of the community, and I think that it is written in a way that the assembly will pass it. Thanks.
Thank you, Ryan. Any response from the board for Ryan first? Okay, I'll go to Shannon.
Thank you, Brianna. I actually share Ryan and Jerry's view. I feel like that last meeting, the tone of last meeting didn't feel defeating, but it did feel as if they were almost resolved to move on. It felt like a little bit of circular talking without a firm ability to grasp anything. Though I also agree that the S1 is not what the community wants. I feel that if we just say vote no without coming with some kind of concession or some alternative ideas, like firm, as to why they should pause it, that it's going to be a yes. And that would be, of course, the worst outcome, because it would be no resolution for Girdwood. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Any response to those? Those were the hands that were up lately. My initial thoughts that are not brand new thoughts are just that something like specific amendments to suggest to the assembly to update, because I think that's what their intention is especially for Suzanne LaFrance being our representative, to give her 2 or however many specific amendments along with the letter of objection to the S1, so that at least we had something that we've been asking for 6 months, like deed restrictions. If, for example, they're going to pass this, at least there's something in it that we actually solidly asked for. Brian, your hand is up again, so do you have something to add? Go for it.
Yeah, it was kind of on that same note there, and I totally agree with you that we should be solution oriented. And I kind of wonder if one solution to this is also to talk about, the Girdwood area plan is being worked on and is scheduled for 2023. So could we add something, an amendment in that, instead of saying it uses the 95 Girdwood area plan, get it to say that it uses the 23 Girdwood plan? But I agree with you, Brianna. I think that being solution oriented and bringing some things to the table along with a resolution to vote no is important.
Thanks, Ryan. Jennifer, your hand is up.
Thank you, Brianna. I have a couple concerns about that. While I appreciate the idea of being solution oriented, we've already made our asks, and then also HLBAC, even if we didn't agree with all their requirements, they did put minimum requirements on when they passed this thing. I'm a little hesitant to. I think maybe another way to tackle this would be to send our letter of opposition with, this is what's missing from this. So rather than saying, okay, well, if you can squeeze in deed restrictions, then I guess it's okay to have a 400-acre disposal of it. We are not going to be able to address the incredible process issues with this thing, but I don't think that means we have to acquiesce to them either. And ultimately, everything that we're fighting and dealing with, I think, stems from having a lack of public process involved with the disposal of public land from the beginning. And I know a lot of people are like, well, move on. The problem is, this is not even the big consideration. Once this land gets transferred, it essentially gets turned into private land. So as much as everybody wants to say this is only 60 acres, this is 400 acres. That is what is on the paper. It is 400 acres. And once it gets turned into private land, Pomeroy can do whatever it wants to with its portion. I mean, to the extent that we're struggling to get anything now while it's public land, we are going to have a complete, almost lost battle ahead of time once it turns into Pomeroy's land, which is a question we haven't even been able to talk about that much, but I don't understand why this whole land transfer back and forth is even happening in this way if it isn't to cut off any public, this whole public process or the threat of it next time. So anyway, and that plus the madness around the industrial park, I understand that this is about Holton Hills, but this is about so much more as well. So I guess I don't want to say, okay, fine, if you give us deed restrictions, it's all good. Deed restrictions aren't going to make it all good. So I would like to say, what I would like to see is our letter of opposition. Here's what it doesn't include, but also the letter of objection needs to include some of our process issues and some of the outstanding questions about the financials as well. I don't understand why they're getting more play, but I also want to say one more thing about that meeting. I've thought more about it. I left the same way, feeling like kind of defeated, but we were there to talk about the S1. We weren't there for people who are already opposing it to talk about their opinions. And in fact, when one of our members spoke with such passion about very nicely summing up the community viewpoint about this land, or kind of reprimanded because we're there for the S1. Well, that means everybody on the assembly who's already decided not to vote on this doesn't have that much to say, which I think was our feeling about why we were talking in circles. Now, I still don't have a sense, I don't mean to like give false hope, but I do want to say that it's consistent with the nature of the meeting that we only heard talk about the S1 and trying to fix the S1. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you, Jennifer, and I appreciate your response to all the comments before that. Shannon's hand is up, and we'll go with that. Next, Shannon.
Thank you, Brianna, and thank you, Jennifer. I think that there's like that, what is it called, Venn diagram. I agree with you as well. I don't think that sending them a letter about what we are willing to accept is the same as conceding. And I think that, well, here comes Dimitri, I might have to end really quickly, that we could do both. We could say this is what we're willing to accept, and these are the things that we definitely are not willing to accept. And these are the things that need to be replaced.
Thank you, Shannon. Since Mike, you're not off mute, I was just going to ask you if you have any thoughts before we keep asking questions.
Yeah, a few things. First of all, I missed most of Kyle's explanation of, unfortunately, I was out of coverage, so I missed his explanation of ownership of Crow Creek Road. I gathered from the response that the construction of Crow Creek Road would be the responsibility of the developer, but the developer includes the municipality. So therefore, the development agreement says that the municipality will take that responsibility for the access road from Hightower and the Crow Creek Road improvements. That's how I inferred what he said. If that was wrong, please correct. The other thing I want to say, I'd slightly characterize the work session a little differently from the way Jennifer characterized it. Maybe I'm just a natural optimist, but I think the discussion was not just about the S1, but also whether the S1 could meet what we needed. And I think that's to me, that there are some fundamental problems, which I think it's clear that an S1, probably even an S2, or an S3 or an S4, are unlikely to be able to fix. I think it's still worth explaining what they are and what we need that isn't currently there. And it could be achieved through adoption of the area plan and the work that will come to implement that. So I think one of the arguments is one way to achieve what we want is to delay the project or delay the planning applications until they're under the control of the adopted 2023 area plan. So there are suggestions we can make, as well as asking for things to be included which probably can't be. So I'm a little bit more optimistic about what that meeting was, but I came to the same conclusion as Jennifer, I think.
Thank you, Mike. Any other comments from the board? Line or in the room? Jennifer?
Sorry, just one other thing really quick. I agree with everything Mike said. Yeah, I think I think he and I are actually on the same page about most of this. And, but I also wanted to say I really like the idea of asking to stop for planning, both the Girdwood area plan and an area specific master plan, if at all possible. And those asks are things that I think we could get done within a year. I don't feel like we're asking huge amounts, but I do understand time is money. But it feels to me like we're asking for things that should have been done in the first place anyway. So while I understand why they won't want to grant them, I feel like that doesn't diminish from the fact that they should have been done. So thanks.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. So any other comments right here? What I'm hearing during this meeting is that if we could combine what we do want and what we don't want, in addition to asking for, we use the phrase asking for adoption of an area plan or master plan before planning can move forward on this development agreement, that is what we would submit to the assembly before the next meeting we think they're going to have. I see Mike's hand is up, and I'll go with Mike first.
Yeah, I think the process for the area master plan would be that the area master plan would have to be completed before the entitlement applications are done. Not that the area master plan would have to be completed before the land disposal is done. And I think that's one of the confusions that we've been asking, or at least some of us have been asking for the area master plan, the plan for that specific tract, to be done before there's any disposal action. But actually, the way code is written, it would have to be done before the planning, the changes, the planned unit development, etc., are achieved. So I think there is potentially some space there as well, although that doesn't address issues like process and issues like the fundamental finances of the project. I just want to add that nuance.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. Anything else in the room? Guy, and then
Sorry. If we're making a wish list here, and I totally agree with the planning. I think it's ridiculous that HLB disposing of this land without an annual report or a 5-year report, and letting those lapse and going on with very little staff even during this whole process. But another ask that if it's in here, the one lot, there's been a lot of discussion about the more than one lot, a multifamily lot to the Girdwood Housing Trust or something like that. And it seems like to me that will be if it is voted yes, and this is 3 lots, it looks a lot better. So that's my 2 cents.
Joel, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks everybody for all the information. Like, again, I know that people have put hours and hours and hours of time into researching all the nuances of this, and I haven't had the time to do that. So there's still a lot that I don't know. I'm kind of learning as I go a little bit. But again, back to my original question of just kind of the value of the land. I mean, to me, again, that kind of, if we're going to convince the assembly to vote no on this, I think that seems to me to be our best bet. It's just to say, from a business standpoint, it's a bad deal. If it is a bad deal, and I guess, and to kind of color that comment a little bit, I ran into a couple of members of the Ocean View Community Council, and told them a little bit of the information about Fulton Hills, and they hadn't really heard it. And I think that the Ocean View Community Council people were just as concerned with kind of what they were seeing as we are. So, I mean, I kind of wonder if maybe that could be a strategy of attack. Because, I mean, because frankly, I don't really see, and, you know, if the community councils just see it as a bad deal, and people who are on community councils tend to be people who are interested in the entire municipality. I don't think that there's necessarily going to be, I don't think we need to be worried about localism. I mean, if it's a bad deal for Girdwood, it's a bad deal for Eagle River. If it's a bad deal for Eagle River, it's a bad deal for Fairview and the rest of the whole city. I mean, if we're not getting the value that this land is worth, then, you know, I can take off my Girdwood resident hat for a second and just put on my Municipality of Anchorage resident hat and say, I'm having a hard time seeing why this is a good deal for the entire municipality. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about what exactly the contract is with the developer, because, I mean, it just seems odd to me that, I mean, if the developer knows that it has to go through that assembly approval, I mean, there's a disconnect to me about how exactly that process works, because, I mean, I guess the way I look at it is kind of like if I were to have, let's say that
Joel, if I interrupt you, Jennifer has her hand up. She might be able to answer one of your questions you said.
okay, and then I'll have another one later.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
Thank you, Brianna. Yeah, I just really want to quickly say there is an initiative going that's talking to different community councils. It is citizen-led. It's not speaking in any way for GBOS, LUC, or Girdwood in general, but what it is trying to get the word out is what the GBOS has said thus far, what we have on paper, and just getting the news out, because I think you're absolutely right. I think that this does resonate with people. It's the bad deal aspect and also the public land without public involvement, because HLB has parcels all over the city, but also because there are other issues of local control happening. And so it's interesting talking to these community councils just to hear about it. It hadn't occurred to me, but South Addition is having some very similar issues with both short-term rentals and concern about HLB development. Fairview and North Star are having issues with road developments and not being considered. So this issue of local control or local input, not control even, but even local input over significant developments is resonating. And so I think that maybe one of the silver linings of this is connecting our community councils even more. But that being said, if you want to know more about it, please feel free to contact me directly, and I can also connect you with the people that are managing that, and anybody else who's interested as well.
Thank you, Jennifer. In the interest of time, we have 10 minutes left on this item. So I would ask what the will of the body is right now. And going back to what Kevin did say before the discussion was land use meets at 7 tonight. If they wanted to do anything, they still have that option, but any feedback before our time needs to be extended? Kevin.
Thanks, Brianna. Yeah, it seems to me if we're reasonably sure that the vote on this is going to be delayed to the 19th. That,
don't know that.
That's true. We don't know that. And point being, if there's going to be a regular GBOS meeting next Monday, LUC could perhaps prepare something tonight, you know, get a vote for LUC members and forward that on to GBOS. Now, I know that's not on the necessarily on tonight's agenda.
Just have to.
But with we can make an amendment to the agenda, provided that's approved. So, to Betsy's point, yes, we don't know that the vote's going to be delayed, but, you know, we might give us better time to have a better response to the assembly. And also, one other thing I would concur with Jennifer, you know, rather than try to go through all this tonight, we've spent a lot of time critiquing, particularly last Wednesday's meeting, critiquing S.1. And I don't see it so much as what concessions can we make. It's more, you know, as Rep. Wilvan pointed out last meeting, Jen pointed out tonight, it's more like, well, these are the things that are missing from this S.1 that, you know, we'd like to see before, you know, feel more comfortable with this before accepting this. So go ahead, Doc.
For procedure, something to think about here is that you guys are right now in a special meeting. Yes, you're in a special meeting, and so GBOS has the will right now, or has the ability to vote. There's a couple of avenues you could consider taking tonight. There could be a motion for a letter of objection to the current S1, and that letter could address a request to the Assembly to delay the vote for tomorrow night, you know, so that questions can be answered that they're going to, and then also a new version comes out, which would seem like that was the intent of Representative Zolotal. And also there could just be a motion tonight for objection to the S1, which could address what you don't like about the S1, what you do like about the S1, and, you know, things like that. So the things could go to LUC, but then GBOS won't meet again in time before tomorrow night's meeting. So if you do want to do something, you probably should do it at this meeting at this time.
Thank you, Kyle. And I was just going to add that that is one of the reasons why Nate Zalato started the S1 was to start with something, make it really broad and have all the opportunity to edit all over. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, the last formal action we did was sending a letter that basically said you know, that the chair at the time there wasn't an S1, there was an S version, and it still reiterated that it didn't go far enough, and there were these, you know, certain things we needed to see. So we could repeat that and say, basically, you know, that we still haven't seen those in the S1, and we urge a delay in the vote beyond tomorrow. And then that would give us the opportunity to consider a more formal resolution for next Monday. So we could send a letter now that basically says, don't vote on it on the 10th. And we haven't seen enough in the S1 to change our previous objection. And then we could do something deeper next Monday and have something drafted in front of us that we can discuss the wording of.
Thank you, Mike. Guy?
I agree with that. I mean, if they're going to vote on this tomorrow, we have the S1, the S1A, the S2, whatever hasn't even been written yet. So we don't even know what they're going to vote on. So, okay. I don't know how much we need to put in as far as, well, if you do, then all these need to go in it. We need, you know, A, B, C, and D, but at the very minimum, we could get a letter of objection for the vote tomorrow on the grounds that we haven't even seen what the new word looks like.
Mike's hand is up. Good.
So it was still up, but I could speak if you want me to, if nobody else is in the queue.
No one's in the queue, and Guy appeared to be finished.
Okay, well, I'll change what I said to make a motion then. So I move that we write a short letter, basically just reiterating the points we made previously, or just referring back to them, saying we haven't seen enough in the S1 to change our objection yet, but we will, and we urge a delay of vote beyond tomorrow. And then on Monday, we can write a formal resolution, or we can have a drafted formal resolution available to us on Monday and in the packet, and then go through that and have a more formal action on Monday.
Thank you, Mike. So we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? From GBOS?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Guy. Any further discussion on that motion? From the board? Betsy?
I just want to ask a question about the area master plan. That means area as in Holton Hills.
Come a little closer in case Mike can't hear you as clearly.
Am I understanding
I was
correctly? The area master plan has to do with the master planning for Holton Hills. Is that correct?
The area master plan is a process under Chapter 9 under the Girdwood Code for how to do development.
Which is different than the Girdwood area plan.
It would be for the Holton Hills project, an area master plan, as
Okay.
opposed to an area plan, which is for the whole of Girdwood.
And who creates that?
Typically, it would be the either the developer would commission it, or it would be a third party.
But someone hired by CY or someone hired by HLB or?
It could be hired by HLB. Typically, it's the landowner who would do it. Sorry, not the developer.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay, we have a couple more minutes left, so let's do a roll call, Kyle, if you can.
Sure. This is interesting. It's a joint meeting, so we're just going to do a GBOS vote. Because I could do two things. I could call for a LUC vote, and then I can call for a GBOS vote after that. So you guys have both.
That's fine with me. I think last time we had that same question of.
Okay, so we'll do a LUC vote. That means one person, one vote. And I'll start with those in the room. Those in.
We make sure we have the, wording of what we're voting on.
Sure.
Clear.
Mike, do you want to, can you reword your motion again?
Yeah, if it's LUC, it would be a request for GBOS to write a letter to the Assembly, reiterating our previous positions that and stating that we do not see that the S1 has, and its current form, has resolved our concerns, and urging a delay of the vote so they do not vote on it tomorrow. So a delay of the action beyond tomorrow's meeting.
Okay. We understand. Okay, so we'll go with the room. If you're in favor of that motion, please raise your hand for a yes. Okay. Those not in favor in the room, please raise your hand. No, 0 no's. I'm going to go online and I'm going to call your name, and it's just going to be quicker this way. And then you can tell us if you vote yes, no, or you're abstaining. So I'll start with Amanda Sassy. Actually, I'm going to hold off on board members because we're going to come back to you. Wellbanks.
As a yes vote to delay.
Okay, thank you. Jerry or Carol?
A yes vote delay for Jerry. Carol's not actually online, so just me.
Okay, Kaylee.
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
Margaret?
Abstaining.
All abstained as well. So that does pass. Motion passes. Now we'll go to GBOS for a roll call vote. Okay. Brianna Sullivan.
Yes.
Guy Wade.
Yes.
Amanda Sassy.
Yes.
Mike Edgington.
Yes.
Jennifer Wingard.
Yes.
Okay. Yep, so that passes with GBOS, and then Brett had his hand up.
Thank you, Kyle, for doing the roll call with all the great participation. Brett has hand up and Guy. So Guy, what is your point of?
I would just like, before we get out of here, what's the mechanism to get this written and get it to the Assembly on time? Just, is it all on Mike's shoulders, or I just don't want it to fall through the cracks?
Thank you.
So Mike, is it all on
Mike,
your shoulders?
You may.
And review, possible review, but
I can write something and send it to the GBOS. I'll write something tonight, send it to the GBOS address, and can be distributed tomorrow for if there are any objections that it doesn't meet what we passed tonight.
And then you can write to Margaret.
Yeah, to Margaret. She will distribute it to everyone.
If you have any questions or objections, back to Margaret or I, and then we'll address that with the writer.
Sure. What time does it need to get to the assembly for them to have it?
It's going to be a lay on the table item, so we'll have to work with our assembly reps to get them to share it. We'll probably send it to all the assembly members, but we will see if they can lay it on the table if they do take up this tomorrow night. They may decide just to delay it at the beginning of the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. And there is one more item on our agenda too, and the rule is 1 hour per item, unless we have.
I ask a very quick question before we go to the second item.
Yes, that's it.
And this is for all of the people listening and all the people that are involved in, have been involved in Houghton Hills. But if we're going to write a quick letter to if we as citizens write a quick letter or email to the assembly, should that be the only thing we say? Please postpone.
It's up to the individual, I think. Kyle, or sorry, Kevin, were you going to say something? You might.
I was thinking the same thing. I think it certainly helps speak, as a community, with a more concise message. But, as a citizen, you can add whatever you want. I think what the GBOS is going to write, hopefully for tomorrow, I think, for me.
I just held off on writing an email because I wanted to see what happened here first, but
Gotcha.
I think it might be best for anybody that wants to write an email between now and tomorrow's meeting at 5 to just have that as the only thing that you say, please postpone.
Be very succinct.
Thank you. They do have a lot on their plate for tomorrow and other business too. Jennifer.
Oh, it's not critical, but I wanted to say that is one text, but I've also really appreciated at the multiple work sessions and through all of the emails and texts that I have been getting, just the broad diversity of voices and the various reasons to vote no on this. I think if we keep at it, maybe we'll start getting some mileage. I did feel at the work session like Suzanne was actually following up, and who knows, might get us some of the answers we've been asking for months through FOIAs and questions to HLB. She seems like she's going to follow up on that. So I think it's okay to, make your ask, like vote no or postpone or whatever. But also you can give your reasons because there are so many.
Thank you, Jennifer.
A very long letter then.
Anything else on number 1 that is passed? We'll go to agenda number 2, consider action on the area master plan requirement in AMC 21.09.030. And we'd like to start us off on this item.
Mike, did you list this as an agenda item? I don't know where this came from.
Been follow up from last.
This came from LUC originally, and then we added it to the last agenda and decided to postpone it on our last meeting. So this was the next meeting. I'm going to recommend we postpone this until Monday as well, because it's really it's inherent in dealing with issue number 1.
Further discussion on, like
So
just said.
Proposal. We'll push that and join it into item number 1 as a sub point on a Monday meeting.
You chopped up a little bit there, Mike. I think I understood you, but please say it again.
I'll make that a formal motion to postpone item 2 and consider it jointly with item 1 when it's on our agenda next Monday.
Thank you, Mike. We have a motion to postpone and join this item with the other one he just said. Do you have a second on that?
I'll second.
Thank you, Guy. Any discussion on that? Okay, any objections? Seeing and hearing none, we will finish that item. Thank you. And we'll move on to public comment. Persons offering public comment must state their full name and address. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person and must be on subjects not listed on the agenda. Anyone have a public comment tonight? Haley, go ahead.
Yes, just quickly, I wanted to say thank you to Hutch, to Ryan for volunteering to work with land use. I think we're lucky to have you, and I really appreciate you putting in the time.
Thanks, Kaylee. I do have one announcement from Chugach Electric, and I'll say it at the next meeting too, because it's not listed here on the agenda, but all of us will be getting invites in the mail, but they are going to be at the next UOS meeting. And there are 2 in-person public meetings coming up January 24th here in the community room from 6:30 to 8 p.m. And then 2 nights later in Indian at the Indian Valley Chapel from 6:30 to 8 p.m. And it's regarding their major project of the transmission line rebuild from Indian to Girdwood. So 11 miles of their transmission line is going to start very soon to be underway. And it is part of the much larger project from Anchorage to Cooper Landing. And it's over 60 years old. So this is a much needed project to them and all of us in the municipality too. And their meetings will have Chugach staff on hand to explain and answer project questions. And they have a website that it will be open soon called Girdwood to IndianRebuild.com. So they're sending postcards in the mail, but Julie Haskett emailed and she will, I think she's speaking at next Monday's meeting about the transmission line rebuild. I have more information on it, but thank you. We'll find out soon. Any other public comment tonight? I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second. Make a motion to adjourn.
Thanks, Kevin. Do we have a second?
I second that.
Thank you, Guy. We are adjourned at 6:08. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Being here. Break before one. I mean, yeah. Wondered if it would take 2 hours.
She said, right?